After nearly 8 years of drug addiction, Michael DeLeon spent 12 years in prison and halfway houses for a gang-related homicide. Since his time in prison, he's dedicated his life to making the world a better place. He is the founder of Steered Straight, which guides young people away from the dangers of drugs and criminal activity. As a motivational speaker, he has spent thousands of hours talking to millions of young adults, and he has worked tirelessly to help people suffering find the road to recovery.
When my son came to me and told me he was an addict, I was terrified. Watching someone go through addiction is absolutely horrifying. The recovery centers of America are not just there for your loved one, but there for you. When you walk through the doors of recovery centers of America, you're greeted not just by a receptionist, but with a smile, with a helping hand. Having recovery centers of America pretty much right down the street, I was able to go twice a week. They provide a family group for the families. That first day I walked in to today has brought me so much hope and so much peace to look back and see the new family walk in, that I'm able to be there to say, you're not alone.
If someone you know is suffering from heroin, opioid, or alcohol addiction, call 1-800-RECOVERY and recover more than you can imagine.
New Jersey is facing an epidemic fueled by opioid painkillers.
We want you to know that recovery from addiction is possible, but you need to know the signs. They can be hard to spot: social withdrawal, financial problems, irritability.
If you see these signs occurring together or suddenly, you may have cause for concern. The signs you spot today
Could save a loved one tomorrow.
Call 844-REACH-NJ or visit reachnj.gov.
You know the deal. Trenton takes, North Jersey gets what it wants, and Atlantic County gets the short end of the stick. I'm Colin Bell, and that doesn't work for me. As a prosecutor, I fought crime and corruption. As a freeholder, I held the line on taxes and spending. And now, as your state senator, I'll stand up to the North Jersey politicians for lower property taxes, cheaper prescription drugs, and to protect women's health care. Less politics, more getting things done. Let's get going.
This Road to Recovery show is brought to you by Seabrook House, helping families find the courage to recover.
Welcome to the Road to Recovery. I'm Michael DeLeon, your host, and today I have a guest that she drove a long way to get here, 6 hours across the state of Pennsylvania to join us today, Christina Burns.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so grateful to share your story with people, your book, and this amazing, hope that you emanate, and you can inspire other people, and you are. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So your journey,
Yeah.
Christina, your journey is incredible, and you actually wrote a book about it.
I did.
It's called
The Journey Called Life, yes.
The Journey Called Life by Christina Burns. The Journey Called Life. Life is a journey.
It is.
But your life has been an incredible journey, right?
It has been, and it's only by the grace of God that I've made it this far, so I'm very grateful for that.
Where did it, where did the journey begin, I guess, that you kind of talk about in the book?
Yeah, so in the book I start at the beginning, and what better place to start than the beginning? It's, I have a past like most other people. I had a rough home life, and both of my parents suffered from their own addictions and mental illness, and although they did the best they could with what they had at the time, the resources, the knowledge, and the experience, as a child it impacted me a lot. And so I internalized a lot of things. There was a lot of, I endured a lot of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, and I guess my saving grace of my childhood would have been my grandmother, who I call Mom, and she was my everything. She gave me my security, my safety, my hope. She was the light at the end of my tunnel. So she did the best that she could also with what she had. And I didn't I spent as much time with her as possible, but I still had the experiences of, the home life when I did go home. And eventually they got divorced, and things just kind of evolved. But I took a lot of those, traumas and experiences, and I internalized it. Depression, anxiety. I think that my road to, my addiction, first of all, started far before the drugs, because it was life. Life was an issue for me, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to deal with myself in a healthy, productive way. So the ways that I acted out, or the behaviors or the choices that I made, they weren't healthy, they were unproductive, and the choices I made gave me the consequences I got, essentially. So it went from, whether it was promiscuity or drugs or alcohol, everything just snowballed and compiled throughout high school. And then after high school, I had moved down to North Carolina. I had married a Marine, and things didn't work out there. It lasted a total of 6 months. So, but when I came back, the depression was even worse than it had ever been before. I really thought that was going to be my happily ever after, my fairy tale come true, and it didn't work out that way. So all that guilt and shame,
and trauma unaddressed, and
absolutely,
expectations not being met, disappointments.
Yes. It all just came to a point where I found heroin, and that was my comfort, and I instantly fell in love, and I was hooked. And
this is in the middle of rural Pennsylvania.
It absolutely is, yes. So you definitely don't have to be in the inner city. I can tell you addiction does not discriminate. It affects people from all walks of life, all different kinds of backgrounds. It doesn't matter. It is what it is, and it doesn't matter who or what you are. It affects everybody. So it's something that, we're talking about an epidemic or a pandemic. This has been going on for quite some time, and we're just starting to catch up with it.
Right. And so, your search for medicating your pain, your search for dealing with all these issues, you thought it was in heroin.
I absolutely did, because I wasn't looking to deal with them. I wasn't looking to hit them head on. I wasn't looking to heal from them. I wanted to forget about them. I wanted to numb them. And it was, I'll be honest, much easier to nod through the day and to just sleep it all away than it was to actually acknowledge and accept and do something different.
Wow.
So it was the easy way out.
How does someone who never did drugs really, you drank and smoked weed and all that, smoked cigarettes and all this stuff as a child, dealing with all this throughout this whole experience?
I absolutely did. I believe I was about 11 years old, maybe the first time I drank alcohol. Started smoking cigarettes probably a little before that. So it had always been an outlet from a very young age. And it, like I said, it just, it spiraled, it snowballed out of control.
So the progression of the gateway drug, alcohol and nicotine and marijuana, and were you taking pills too?
On occasion. In high school, I dated someone who actually sold ecstasy. So when he would get them in large quantities, anything that was broken or crushed and couldn't be sold, we ate like candy. So.
Wow. And then you found heroin.
Yes.
And heroin.
It was over.
It was over. It took everything. And we'll talk more about Christina's journey right after this commercial break.
Seabrook House has been helping families find the courage to recover from alcoholism, drug addiction, and other compulsive mental disorders for over 42 years. Our programs include the Family Matrix program that allows families to heal and begin to strengthen the family bonds strained by addiction, inpatient rehabilitation, extended care, and outpatient treatments. If you or a loved one is suffering from addiction, please call or visit us online today. Seabrook House, helping families find the courage to recover.
Since 1895, you've trusted Lennox to provide you with the most advanced furnaces and air conditioners built to last. Our Lennox Premier dealers are trained to deliver a level of comfort and service no one else can match. Because at Lennox, we know why you really put your trust in us. When looking for a company you can trust with your family's home comfort, call Ambient Comfort. Trust is what Ambient Comfort has built our reputation on. Get up to $1,600 in rebates or special financing.
From the boardwalk to our farmland, Atlantic County has a lot to offer. So we need a diverse economy that benefits everyone.
And leadership that will make it happen. I'm John Armato.
And I'm Vince Mazzio. As your assemblyman, we're ready to cut red tape and make it easier on small businesses.
And attract new businesses and jobs.
And we'll work to curb the skyrocketing property taxes that affect us all. I'm Vince Mazzio.
And I'm John Armato, and that's our plan.
New Jersey is facing an epidemic fueled by opioid painkillers.
We want you to know that recovery from addiction is possible, but you need to know the signs. They can be hard to spot. Social withdrawal, financial problems, irritability.
If you see these signs occurring together or suddenly, you may have cause for concern. The signs you spot today
Could save a loved one tomorrow.
Call 844-REACH-NJ or visit reachnj.gov.
This Road to Recovery show is brought to you by Seabrook House, helping families find the courage to recover.
Welcome back to the Road to Recovery. Christina Burns is with us today, published author of a book called The Journey Called Life. And wow, what a journey it's been, right? And
Yes.
so here you are in rural Pennsylvania, hooked on heroin.
Yes.
Unreal. And when was this? How long ago was this?
So this would have been 2003.
I mean, think about that, ladies and gentlemen, 2003. We weren't talking about the heroin epidemic in America in 2003.
No.
People are like, in 2017, some people still don't believe it's here.
Yes.
It was 14 years ago.
Yes.
So you found heroin, and where did heroin take you?
To the deepest, darkest pits of hell, basically.
And how did you get away from it?
I would say by the grace of God, a whole lot of
Sure.
prayer, and it got to a point, well, it wasn't overnight, it wasn't easy, it was a journey in itself.
Right.
It absolutely was.
But a lot of people, want to hear that part because they're struggling. They have a daughter struggling, a niece struggling, a son struggling. What would you tell people,
Don't give up. People do change. I'm a perfect example of that. When my family found out, instantly I had to go to rehab, and not because I was done with the drugs, but because I was done hearing them complain about it. So I tried to satisfy their needs. And I wouldn't say that the first few times I went to rehab, because there was quite a few, I wouldn't say the first few times they weren't a waste. Every single time that I went to a meeting, or I talked to someone in recovery, or I went to rehab or a recovery house, every step I took, whether I was in it the whole way or not, seeds were planted the entire time. And those seeds eventually, when God watered them, and when I started beginning making different choices, they're the seeds that grew.
Sure.
My journey through rehabs and institutions, and eventually I got to a point where I wanted to be done with the drugs. The willingness, was getting there. I was definitely contemplating it, but I wasn't really taking the action steps to do it. So when I say that, those seeds were planted, they absolutely were planted, but my addiction wasn't just to the drugs. My problem was everything. My problem was me, and not knowing how to handle or deal with me or cope with me in a healthy, productive way. I was done with the drugs, per se. I was done with heroin. I was done with the consequences. I didn't want the consequences, the guilt, the shame, but I wasn't done with the lifestyle. Right. It's very hard to go from not working a job and spending over $1,000 a week on drugs to, well, let's put the drugs down and be healthy and productive and work 9 to 5 for minimum wage. And that's a really big mindset to change. So I wanted to keep the lifestyle, just not the drug.
Sure.
So I switched out heroin for, other drugs, which I thought was better. And instead of spending time with drug users, I spent time with drug dealers. So I crossed the street, essentially. And I thought that was the key. And I can tell you that the lifestyle, they say if the drugs don't kill you, the lifestyle will.
Right.
That's not a joke. The lifestyle took me to a deeper part of hell than even the drug had.
Wow.
Believe it or not. So this disease, addiction, is all encompassing. It's not just about the drugs and the alcohol. I feel that we need to, when we heal or we recover, we need to do it on all levels simultaneously, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. For me, switching sides of the street, I ended up becoming a witness to murder. I was kidnapped, and I eventually broke free from that. And as someone who had learned to run from police, I was actually searching for police for the first time ever and looking for help. And that's when my desire to change went from contemplation to action steps.
Wow.
It took a lot to get me to that point. So when people say, well, they say they want to do good, they say they want to be clean,
right.
They go to rehab, they say they're doing well, and then a couple weeks later they relapse. It's not that they don't want to do good. It's not that the willingness isn't there. It's that, as I've heard before about the scales, the willingness has to outweigh the desire to use. And as an addict, that scale moves, And so it's important to watch in our daily, all day, every choice you make. For me, it's all about choices. Who I surround myself with, who I don't surround myself with.
Yeah.
Whether that's family, friends, coworkers, random people. Setting healthy boundaries is huge. Not just setting them, but being able to stick to them. So that if somebody crosses those boundaries, you have the ability to walk away and do what's necessary for you to stay focused on your goals and not be distracted.
You're becoming well and you're becoming fit and healthy.
Yes.
Recovery. We'll talk more with Christina Burns right after this.
New Jersey is facing an epidemic fueled by opioid painkillers.
We want you to know that recovery from addiction is possible, but you need to know the signs. They can be hard to spot: social withdrawal, financial problems, irritability.
If you see these signs occurring together or suddenly, you may have cause for concern. The signs you spot today
Could save a loved one tomorrow.
Call 844-REACH-NJ or visit reachnj.gov.
Since 1895, you've trusted Lennox to provide you with the most advanced furnaces and air conditioners built to last. Our Lennox Premier dealers are trained to deliver a level of comfort and service no one else can match. Because at Lennox, we know why you really put your trust in us. When looking for a company you can trust with your family's home comfort, call Ambient Comfort. Trust is what Ambient Comfort has built our reputation on. Get up to $1,600 in rebates or special financing.
You know the deal. Trenton takes, North Jersey gets what it wants, and Atlantic County gets the short end of the stick. I'm Colin Bell, and that doesn't work for me. As a prosecutor, I fought crime and corruption. As a freeholder, I held the line on taxes and spending. And now, as your state senator, I'll stand up to the North Jersey politicians for lower property taxes, cheaper prescription drugs, and to protect women's health care. Less politics, more getting things done. Let's get going.
Seabrook House has been helping families find the courage to recover from alcoholism, drug addiction, and other compulsive mental disorders for over 42 years. Our programs include the Family Matrix program that allows families to heal and begin to strengthen the family bonds strained by addiction, inpatient rehabilitation, extended care, and outpatient treatments. If you or a loved one is suffering from addiction, please call or visit us online today. Seabrook House, helping families find the courage to recover.
This Road to Recovery show is brought to you by Seabrook House, helping families find the courage to recover.
Here with Christina Burns, published author of The Journey Called Life. And this whole transformation from, dealing with all the adverse childhood experiences and the trauma to becoming in the depths of heroin addiction, to crossing the street to dealing in drugs, to experience a murder, a kidnapping, to come out of all that and to deal with self. That's incredible. I mean, you finally found that the willingness, I guess, to recover.
Yeah, and I like how you said self, because far before a drug was ever an issue, self was an issue, life was an issue. And for whatever reasons, I didn't have the ability to handle that in a healthy way. And so, after those circumstances occurred, is when I really took a step back and, I was praying one day and I had basically lost all hope. And I was so frustrated that I sat down while I was standing screaming, yelling at God as if he was, sitting on the cloud looking down at me, and I was looking up at him, telling him all the horrible things I thought. And I said, where are you? If you've been here this entire time, why am I where I am?
Sure.
I feel so alone. I waited to hear that booming voice from above, or, something fall over in the room, and there was my answer. And it didn't happen. And I out of exhaustion, I sat down, turned on the TV, and before the screen even had time to materialize, the sound came through because it was turned up from the last time it had been used. And Joyce Myers came across, and I didn't know at the time who it was, but it was her words that shot through me like an arrow. She said, "God's talking to you. He said, sit down, shut up, and wait on me." And it was like this huge light turned on, because for me, I always had something to say. I was the loudest person in the room. I always wanted to be heard, but I wasn't really saying anything worth hearing. Sure. And for the first time ever, I just needed to be silent, be still. And so that's what I did. And God slowly started doing. It wasn't that he wasn't there working. It was that I wasn't listening, I wasn't following, I wasn't paying attention, because I was so focused on fixing everything myself, because I knew everything and I knew what was best, that I just kept leading myself in a circle, insanity. Mm-hmm. I kept doing the same things and expecting a different result, and then blaming everybody and everything when the results didn't change. So it was at that point where I really decided that, somebody told me, if you put half the amount of energy into your recovery as you did into your addiction, imagine how far you could go. And that really struck me. It made sense for the first time. And I'm not going to say that my changes miraculously happened right then and there. It was a process. It took a few years. I had a lot of trauma to deal with, a lot of mental health issues to deal with. There was a time when after the murder and the kidnapping, I couldn't speak full sentences. I couldn't complete full thoughts. People would meet me for the first time and they thought that I suffered from mental retardation. I could not function. It was hard, and I was pretty close to being, locked away and the key thrown away, because people felt that there was no hope. Yeah. I felt there was no hope. But God knew different, and he had a bigger plan. Sure. And so I just kept at it. I did a lot of therapy. I tried a ton of medications. I did not feel that any of the medications worked for me. I felt that they complicated. I felt they put me in a fog. And also, I was becoming aware, and I admitted to myself that every time they would prescribe something new, I would go and I would research it, and I would see if and how I could get high off of it. So to me, that was counterproductive.
Sure.
So I decided no medications. I'm just gonna, get down to the nitty-gritty, pray, ask for guidance, and work consciously and wholeheartedly every choice, every decision, really put forth every ounce of effort that I had into changing in a positive direction.
And you did, and let me tell you where that direction went real quick after this commercial break.
You know the deal. Trenton takes, North Jersey gets what it wants, and Atlantic County gets the short end of the stick. I'm Colin Bell, and that doesn't work for me. As a prosecutor, I fought crime and corruption. As a freeholder, I held the line on taxes and spending. And now, as your state senator, I'll stand up to the North Jersey politicians for lower property taxes, cheaper prescription drugs, and to protect women's health care. Less politics, more getting things done. Let's get going.
When my son came to me and told me he was an addict, I was terrified. Watching someone go through addiction is absolutely horrifying. The recovery centers of America are not just there for your loved one, but there for you. When you walk through the doors of recovery centers of America, you're greeted not just by a receptionist, but with a smile, with a helping hand. Having recovery centers of America pretty much right down the street, I was able to go twice a week. They provide a family group for the families. That first day I walked in to today has brought me so much hope and so much peace to look back and see the new family walk in, that I'm able to be there to say, you're not alone.
If someone you know is suffering from heroin, opioid, or alcohol addiction, call 1-800-RECOVERY and recover more than you can imagine.
This Road to Recovery show is brought to you by Seabrook House, helping families find the courage to recover.
Back on the road to recovery, sharing the great, not ending, but like different scene 27, right?
Yes.
With Christina Burns. So
Yes.
you made that willingness, you made that choice, you had the willingness, and you just went all in.
I did, and when we break trust of those around us, it's hard for them to give that back. So no matter how much effort I put in, no matter how hard I was trying, nobody believed it. They didn't want to give me rides to meetings. They didn't understand why I was going to sit in a room full of junkies, as they said, and because that's where I needed to be. And so at that time, my mom was very sick, and she was dying a very slow and traumatic death, and I knew that if I didn't completely surround myself in positive support and recovery, I wouldn't be able to do it. So that's what I did. I threw myself into it, not only into my recovery, but I threw myself into an education. I decided that being clean and sober wasn't enough. I wanted to actually give back and do more. So I went to Penn State with my son. I couldn't afford daycare, so I took him with me. 12 credits is full-time. We did 18 credits all year long, didn't take any summers off. We did 6 years of school in 3 years and 6 months. I obtained a Bachelor of Science and a certification in chemical dependency and preventions counseling.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and I studied human development and family studies across the lifespan, which gave me a true understanding of myself and those around me, which really helped as well. So I became a counselor. I worked with homeless veterans, mental health, behavioral health, drug and alcohol for a few years. And then I put that on hold. I became a published author and a motivational speaker. And then recently, I developed a nonprofit organization for recovering addicts. And so I'm now the founder, president, and CEO of New Beginnings Life Recovery. So that's a...
Wow, what a journey, New Beginnings Life Recovery.
Yes.
It is New Beginnings. Published author, The Journey Called Life. Check it out. You can get it on Amazon. Christina Burns, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. There is hope. There is that final push at the, at that time to find that life that you were destined to live. I'm on the road to recovery, Michael DeLeon. We'll see you on the next episode.